that Blue Ivy came from a surrogate.
Yep.
They shut that hospital down like a president had just been shot.
But there are actually a lot of people that believe this rumor, and it's crazy. I guess there are some crazy celebrities in the world, so we get a bad rep.
Before we begin, I want to ask you something from the heart. Please watch this story with an open mind. Not with hate, not with blind loyalty, and not with the need to attack anyone. Because sometimes the truth is not loud. Sometimes it hides behind fame, power, silence, and perfect smiles. And sometimes the questions people are afraid to ask become the very questions that refuse to go away. So take a deep breath, stay with me until the end, and listen carefully. Because this story is not just about celebrities. It is about image. It is about control. It is about what happens when one person speaks and the whole world freezes. And today, the name at the center of that storm is Jaguar Wright. And this time, she is not aiming low. She is aiming at one of the most powerful couples in music history, Beyoncé and Jay-Z. Now here is the reason so many people are paying attention. When Jaguar Wright first started making shocking claims about powerful people in the music industry, many laughed at her. They called her bitter. They called her unstable. They dismissed her words as noise. But later, when lawsuits, investigations, and public conversations started rising around some of the very names she mentioned, people began looking back differently. And that is why this new storm feels different. Because now, when Jaguar speaks, people do not laugh as quickly. They listen. And what she is saying now has made the internet pause all over again. She is raising questions about one of the most private and emotional chapters in Beyoncé's life, the pregnancy and birth of Blue Ivy. A chapter many people thought was already settled. But according to Jaguar Wright, the story the public accepted may not be the full story. That is the rumor. That is the claim. And that is exactly why this topic has exploded once again. So let us slow everything down and go back to the beginning. Back to 2011. At that time, Beyoncé was glowing. She was untouchable. Her career was soaring, her image was powerful, and together she and Jay-Z looked like music royalty. They were not just famous, they felt larger than life. Then came the unforgettable moment at the MTV Video Music Awards. The lights were shining. The crowd was already excited. Beyoncé performed with confidence, beauty, and total control. And then, in one dramatic moment, she revealed her baby bump to the world. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Jay-Z smiled proudly from the audience. It was one of those celebrity moments that felt magical, almost like a fairy tale. And just like that, the world welcomed the coming of baby Blue before she was even born. For many people, it was a beautiful reveal. But for others, that was only the beginning of the questions. Because not long after that iconic moment, another clip began making rounds online. It was an interview on an Australian television show. Beyoncé appeared calm, elegant, and visibly pregnant. But when she sat down, something happened that sent the internet into absolute chaos. Her dress folded in a strange way around her stomach, and to some viewers, it looked like the baby bump moved unnaturally. That one moment became gasoline on a fire. People replayed it again and again. They slowed it down. They zoomed in. They analyzed every angle like detectives trying to solve a case. Some said it was obvious, just fabric folding when she sat down. Others said no, something looked off. And from that moment on, a rumor was born that simply would not die. Was it just the dress? Was it camera angle? Or was it, as some people claimed, evidence that something bigger was being hidden? The internet split into two sides almost overnight. One side said, "This is ridiculous, leave her alone." The the other side said, "Wait a minute, what if something is not adding up?" And once a rumor enters the public mind, especially around someone as famous as Beyoncé, it can become almost impossible to erase. Beyoncé herself addressed the speculation and made it clear that she found it absurd. She later spoke openly about the deep pain of experiencing a miscarriage before Blue Ivy. She described the pregnancy as precious, emotional, and deeply personal. To her, it was not gossip. It was life. It was loss. It was healing. It was hope. And that is what made the rumor feel cruel to many people. Because this was not just celebrity chatter anymore. This was a conversation about motherhood, grief, privacy, and a child. A line many believed should never have been crossed. But even after public statements, even after emotional explanations, the questions kept growing. And part of the reason was not just the interview clip. It was everything that happened around the birth itself. When Blue Ivy was born, reports described unusually intense security around the hospital. Stories spread about restricted access, guarded hallways, and privacy measures so extreme that people started wondering why everything felt so locked down. Some reports claimed entire areas were tightly controlled. Some families said movement around parts of the hospital had become difficult. The hospital pushed back on parts of those stories, but by then it was too late. The rumor machine was already running at full speed. And whenever the public sees heavy secrecy around a major celebrity event, curiosity grows. People start asking questions. Why so much protection? Why so much privacy? Why did everything feel so sealed off? Of course, one answer is simple. Because Beyoncé and Jay-Z are global superstars, and global superstars protect private moments in big ways. That explanation makes sense. But for people already filled with suspicion, the security only made the mystery feel bigger. Then, just when the noise had started to settle, Jaguar Wright stepped in and turned the volume all the way back up. She did not just repeat old rumors. She pushed the story into even darker territory. She brought up a name that instantly changed the mood online. Kathy White. Now, for many people, that name meant very little at first, but to others, it was a name already surrounded by whispers. Kathy White was described in different places as someone connected to elite entertainment circles, moving among powerful people and high-profile spaces. And according to Jaguar Wright, Kathy White was not just a side character in some industry rumor. She was central to a hidden story. Jaguar made the explosive claim that Kathy White may have been carrying Jay-Z's child, and even suggested that the timing of Kathy White's life, and later her death, lined up too closely with Blue Ivy's birth for Jaguar to believe it was a coincidence. Let that sink in. That is not a small allegation. That is the kind of statement that instantly sets social media on fire. And that is exactly what happened. Because once Kathy White's name entered the conversation, the story stopped being just about a collapsing baby bump clip from television. Now it became something far more disturbing in the eyes of those following the rumors. Now people started connecting timelines. They started revisiting old names. They started wondering whether there were hidden stories behind public perfection. And then came the part that made everything even heavier. Kathy White died young. Her death was reported as a brain aneurysm. Tragic, sudden, shocking. And because it happened close enough to the timeline people were discussing, the internet did what it always does. It started building theories. Was it just a heartbreaking medical tragedy? Was it unrelated? Was it coincidence? Or was there some deeper secret no one could prove, but many were willing to imagine? This is the exact space where rumor becomes powerful. Not because it is proven, but because it sounds just believable enough to keep people staring. And Jaguar Wright knows how to speak in that space. She speaks with certainty. She speaks without fear. She speaks in a way that makes people feel like she has seen behind doors others only guess about. That does not prove she is right, but it does explain why people keep listening. Because confidence can be very persuasive, especially when it comes from someone who has already made controversial claims in the past that later made people rethink their first reactions. That is what gives this story its strange power. Not proof, not documents, not confirmed evidence, but pattern, timing, mystery, and the uncomfortable memory of times when the public dismissed something too quickly. And that is where the story becomes bigger than Beyoncé. Because now, we are not only talking about one pregnancy
go buy
rumor.
some albums and listen to
We are
the
talking
albums.
about
Like,
how the
that's all
public
there.
sees
If
power.
you
Beyoncé has built one of the most polished images in modern entertainment. Every appearance feels intentional. Every reveal feels carefully timed. Every documentary, performance, and visual moment
able to
seems
overcome and where
designed
we
with
sit
precision.
now today. You know,
That
and as
level
far
of
as, like,
control
you know,
is
success,
part of what makes her
I just look at it.
extraordinary. It is why millions admire her. It is why her brand feels almost flawless. But here is the strange
Like, his
side
wings,
effect
like,
of
you know,
perfection.
we made it. Like,
When a person
so the
appears too
transition
polished, too
has
controlled,
happened.
too
Please.
exact, some people begin to wonder what is happening off camera. Perfection inspires admiration, but it can also inspire suspicion. And that is where Jaguar Wright becomes the opposite force. Beyoncé represents control. Jaguar represents chaos. Beyoncé is polished, measured, and protected. Jaguar is raw, sharp, and unfiltered. Beyoncé speaks carefully. Jaguar speaks like she has nothing left to lose. And the internet loves contrast. That contrast is what keeps people hooked. Because next to a person whose image feels almost royal, the loud, messy truth teller, or alleged truth teller, can feel more real to some people, even without hard proof. That does not make the claims true, but it makes them emotionally gripping. And in the age of online storytelling, emotion spreads faster than facts. Even Beyoncé's music has been dragged into these discussions. Some listeners revisit songs about grief, loss, motherhood, and pain, and they hear not just art, but possible hidden meaning. They wonder whether certain lyrics reveal deeper wounds or quiet confessions. Others reject
what
that
I'm saying? Like,
idea
you know, you
entirely
stole
and say
away.
these songs are
Where made
simply
away
the
so that
honest
you get
voice
to
of a
live your
woman
life
who has
out
publicly
through that.
spoken about
Right.
miscarriage and
And
loss.
two, we have responsibility.
And honestly, both reactions show something important. When an artist is private, people begin reading between every line. Every lyric becomes a clue. Every silence becomes suspicious.
even
Every
in those
detail becomes a theory. Then there is the role of family.
songs,
Beyoncé's mother has publicly defended her daughter and spoken about how
I just
painful
look at
and
it
unfair
like all the
these
people
rumors
that
have
I was
been.
inspired by.
From
like,
her
Muhammad
perspective,
Ali was like,
this was not harmless gossip.
26, so
It was
politics
cruel
is usual.
speculation
And
aimed
those
at a
songs
woman who
really
had
dealt
already
with
suffered
regrets
through
on
private
her-
heartbreak. A mother seeing her daughter questioned during such a vulnerable chapter would naturally feel protective, angry, and exhausted. And perhaps that is one of the saddest parts of stories like this. Fame turns private pain into public entertainment. A pregnancy becomes a debate. A birth becomes a conspiracy. A loss becomes content. And once millions of strangers begin discussing your life, your truth no longer belongs only to you. It gets pulled apart piece by people who were never in the room. Still, even with all of that said, Jaguar Wright's words continue spreading because she has built a reputation on saying the things other people are too scared to say. Whether she is exposing hidden
to push
truths
the
or
conversation
simply
till we're
throwing
all
out
equal in
dangerous
this place, because
accusations,
until everyone's
she has
free,
mastered one thing: making people stop scrolling, making people lean in, making people ask, what if? And what if is one of the
have an album
strongest
come out
hooks in
that
the
would be
world.
about
frivolous together.
What if the public story
And
was incomplete?
And Muhammad Ali was like, I'm so
What if
pretty.
power helped
I'm
shape the
greatest.
narrative?
And like people paid to see him
What if
lose.
the truth is more complicated than anyone wants to admit? What if Jaguar is wrong? What if she is not? These questions are why this rumor refuses to disappear. Not because it has been proven, but because it feeds on uncertainty. And uncertainty is powerful. Now let us be honest. There is a huge difference between suspicion
That's
and
really
evidence.
not the goal. The goal
There
is
is a
not to be
huge difference
successful and
between a
famous.
rumor people cannot stop discussing and a fact that has actually been confirmed. And that line matters. It matters because real people are involved. A real mother, a real child, a real family, a real woman who died tragically young, and a real audience trying to figure out what to believe in a world where image and truth do not always look the same. So where does that leave us? Right here in the middle of a story with no clean
That's
ending.
what was drawing his fights. Like
On
people
one
were coming
side,
there to
there
see
is
him
the
lose
official
because he
story.
was so
Beyoncé
confident.
carried Blue Ivy, gave birth, protected her privacy, and endured
on,
cruel public
I
speculation
have to
during
say
a
something
sacred
because
moment
this
in her
album
life.
wasn't even.
On the other side, there are ongoing rumors fueled by old clips, strange timing, heavy secrecy, internet investigation, and Jaguar Wright's explosive claims. And between those two sides lives the truth, whatever that truth may be. Maybe the pregnancy was exactly what Beyoncé said it was. Maybe every strange moment
That's
had a
just the way the
simple
world was set up.
explanation.
But just like the things
Maybe
that we
the internet created a storm out of fabric, camera angles, and celebrity privacy. Or maybe there are parts of this story the public will never fully know. That is the uncomfortable reality. Not every mystery gets solved. Not every rumor gets buried. And not every public image tells the whole private story. But one thing is certain. Every time Jaguar Wright speaks, the entertainment world shifts. People stop. People listen. People remember the time she was dismissed. And whether you believe her, doubt her,
That's not the goal.
or
The
stand
goal
somewhere
is
in the
if
middle,
you have a
you
specific
cannot deny her
God-given ability.
impact. She knows how to shake the room. And maybe that is why her voice keeps returning to the center of these conversations. Because in a world built on branding, silence, and image management, the loudest unfiltered voice often becomes the most unforgettable one. So now the question comes to you. What do you believe? Do you think this is nothing more than another internet rumor that grew too big? Do you think people have unfairly crossed a line into one family's private pain? Or do you think Jaguar Wright is once again forcing people to look harder at a story they accepted too easily?
Like that, it's just really
There may
honest.
never
But
be
you
a
probably
final
couldn't have
answer
gotten away
that
with-
satisfies everyone.
Okay, you do that.
But the conversation itself reveals something bigger than celebrity gossip. It reveals how badly people want the truth. It reveals how quickly doubt can grow in the presence of secrecy. And it reveals how, in the world of fame, the difference between reality and narrative can sometimes feel impossibly thin. And maybe that is the most haunting part of all. Not whether the
Almost
rumor
real.
is,
Right.
That's just
but
yeah,
how
yeah.
easily
You guys
the world
like-
can become trapped between
It's like-
certainty and suspicion,
It's like
between
like-
reality, between what we are shown and what we are left to imagine.
last song on my first album.
If you made it this far,
You know, that was
thank
a
you for
real
staying
topic.
with me. Because this was not a simple story. It was
He
emotional,
gave me my bravado.
It was-
I'm like,
and it was questions that do not have easy answers. But sometimes the stories that
Like a-
stay with us the longest are the ones
like
that
a
end
peacock,
with a
like
question
spread-
mark.